The platform lights burned white, too bright, too clean, built for cameras instead of people. Blackwell Central Subway had been transformed for the ceremony, banners strung along the tiled walls, guard wolves standing in perfect rows with their oath badges gleaming silver against their chests. Alpha King Ronan Blackwell stood at the center of it all, composed and unreadable, ready to announce the woman the council had chosen to stand beside him. Lady Selene Blackwell waited just behind his shoulder, elegant and untouchable, already wearing the confidence of a title that had not yet been given to her. The screens above the platform glowed with a single phrase, repeated in cold silver letters: protection through obedience. That was when the commotion started near the maintenance tunnel, boots scraping against concrete, a voice raised in protest that no one bothered to soften for the cameras. 2 guards dragged a young woman out into the light, her cleaner's uniform stained with the work of a long night shift, her wrists bound in front of her. Iris Vale did not struggle. She had learned long ago that struggling only gave power an excuse. Commander Garrick Voss stepped forward, his voice carrying easily across the platform. "A fraud, my king." He held up her wrist, turning it toward the cameras, revealing a faint, unmistakable mark beneath her skin. A rogue plant, wearing a mate mark she was never given. Selene's lip curled with practiced disgust. A gutter witch, dressed up to disgrace this ceremony. Ronan's jaw tightened as he stepped closer, studying the mark that should not have existed, that should not have matched the one hidden beneath his own sleeve. He reached for the Alpha brand kept at his side for exactly this purpose. A tool meant to mark liars before the world could be deceived by them. Iris did not look away as the heated metal pressed against her skin. False claimant. The words burned into her wrist in furious red, and still she did not cry out. Instead, the platform lights flickered. One by one, the oath badges across the guards' chests began to crack, hairline fractures spreading like frost across silver. A guard near the front dropped to his knees, then another. Then the entire line of guard wolves knelt at once, heads bowed, not before their king, but before the woman he had just branded a liar. Ronan stood frozen, the brand still smoking faintly in his hand. Iris met his eyes across the kneeling guards, her voice steady despite the pain still radiating from her wrist. "I am not your Luna because of a mark. I am the proof your guards have been breaking their oaths in your name." Iris had worked the night shift at Blackwell Central for 3 years, cleaning the platforms after every raid, every sweep, every quiet act of violence the city preferred not to look at directly. She knew which maintenance alcoves could hide a frightened child during a security sweep, which service doors stuck just enough to buy someone a few extra seconds, which tunnels the guards never bothered to check because no one with real rank slept there. She kept her wrists wrapped in cloth bandages, always, hiding the fine silver cracks that had been forming beneath her skin for years. Cracks she did not fully understand until she was old enough to recognize a pattern. Her curse did not command loyalty. It remembered the moment loyalty became a weapon. Every time a guard's oath was twisted into something that betrayed the very people it was meant to protect. A fracture bloomed somewhere on Iris's skin, silver when the oath could still be mended, red when it had already drawn blood, black when someone was about to die because a guard had chosen obedience over conscience. She carried them quietly, the way she had learned to carry everything, because no one had ever asked her to explain them, and she had never trusted anyone enough to try. Her father, Iris Vale, had been a guard wolf once, the kind who still believed the badge meant something. He used to tell her, low and certain, the way fathers pass down the only truth they have left to give. A guard does not stand in front of power. A guard stands between power and the person it might crush. One night, Tomas was ordered to seal a subway exit to protect an elite convoy passing through during an emergency. Behind that sealed door, homeless families and rogue children were trapped, fleeing a fire spreading through the lower tunnels. Tomas disobeyed the order and opened the door himself, pulling 17 people to safety before the smoke could take them. The next morning, Guard Command called him a traitor. His oath badge was broken publicly, and he died in a prison transport days later, the official record listing his death as an oath collapse. Iris had never believed that story, not for a single day. They did not punish my father because he broke his oath. They killed him because he remembered what it meant. From that night forward, she stopped seeing oath badges as anything sacred. To her, they were nothing more than silver collars, pretty enough to admire, cruel enough to strangle. Ronan had not always trusted Garrick the way he did now. Not until the night the South Line collapsed when he was 16 years old. His father wounded, the tunnels filling with smoke, and the screams of guards who had no idea how to lead. Ronan had been too young to command anyone, too frightened to do anything but breathe through the panic, clawing up his throat. It was Garrick who pulled him out of that collapsing tunnel, who pressed the first oath badge Ronan ever held into his shaking hand, and spoke words that would shape the rest of his life. Protection is what keeps fear from becoming a city. Ronan had learned the word protection from Garrick before he ever learned how to command. That single truth had rooted itself so deeply that when Garrick became head of Guard Wolves years later, Ronan handed him control over the entire oath interpretation system without a second thought. He told himself it was gratitude. In truth, it was something closer to inherited blindness. After the subway wars, Ronan built the Guard Wolf network to keep his city safe, every guard connected through an oath badge tied directly into the command system, glowing when a guard obeyed, cracking when a guard betrayed their post. He believed the system was transparent, a badge that could not lie. What he never questioned was who had written the rules that decided what loyalty meant in the first place. A guard who questions every order cannot protect a city fast enough. That belief had felt reasonable once, practical even, the kind of thinking that kept a city moving during a crisis. He had signed the Subway Stability Order with that same reasoning, a policy meant to streamline emergency response. In underground emergencies, protection priority follows strategic pack value. Garrick had taken that single sentence and built an entire machine of quiet cruelty around it, sealing poor tunnels first, clearing elite routes without hesitation, punishing any guard who dared to disobey. Garrick did not think of himself as a monster. He believed, with the same unshakable certainty that had once saved a 16-year-old boy from a burning tunnel, that protection could never be soft. Protection is not kindness. Protection is control applied before chaos spreads. To him, a guard who followed conscience instead of command was not brave. A guard who chooses his conscience over command is not loyal. He is a weapon pointed at his own king. Celine, watching the branding unfold from the edge of the platform, understood the danger Iris posed far better than most. Her family had built their fortune quietly redeveloping subway zones once cleared during emergency sweeps. Tunnels that had once held families now valued only as future property. If a cleaner could be proven a true Luna, every locked tunnel her family had profited from would become a witness against them. If she is Luna, then every locked tunnel becomes a witness against us. To Celine, the class order that kept the city clean and profitable could not survive if guard wolves knelt before someone born beneath a service uniform. A city cannot kneel to a cleaner and still call itself protected. Back on the platform, Ronan finally found his voice, commanding the kneeling guards to stand. Some obeyed instantly, shame flooding their faces. Others could not move at all, trembling as though hearing something ancient stirring beneath their training for the first time. Iris pressed her bound wrists against her stomach, pain radiating up through her bones from the sheer number of oaths reawakening at once. Garrick insisted she was enchanting them, manipulating the badges through some rogue trick. Celine demanded she be locked away immediately, before the cameras captured anything worse. Ronan raised his hand to order her arrest, the words nearly formed on his tongue. When one of the kneeling guards spoke first, his voice raw and unsteady. "She is not commanding us, she is reminding us." The words landed harder than any accusation could have. Ronan lowered his hand slowly, unable to explain away what he had just witnessed in front of every camera in the city. He ordered Iris taken to security control instead of a holding cell, the first small choice he made that night that leaned toward truth instead of damage control. Inside security control, Iris demanded to see her father's sealed record, refusing to let the moment pass without answers. Garrick claimed the file remained sealed under treason protocols, his tone flat and final. Ronan overrode him and opened it himself. The official record still read exactly as it always had: Iris Vale, guard, abandoned post during active emergency. An old guard named Elias Rook arrived before the argument could escalate further, carrying a data drive he had kept hidden for years. Evidence that Tomas had saved 17 civilians before Guard Command buried the footage entirely. Iris pressed her palm against a fragment of her father's shattered badge, and a white fracture bloomed across her collarbone, sharp and cold. It did not show betrayal. It showed a command that had ordered civilians locked inside a burning tunnel. Ronan stared at the evidence, something cracking quietly behind his composed expression. Though he was not yet ready to say what it meant for the man who had once pulled him from the smoke himself. Weeks passed as the investigation crawled forward, and Iris began noticing something troubling in the fractures forming around a young guard named Theo Marr. His mark was silver, not red, meaning his oath had bent but had not yet fully broken. He had been forced by Garrick to follow a false order, but some part of him was still fighting to hear the truth beneath it. The trouble was, Theo had also stood guard during the raid that captured Iris's closest friend, Mara Quinn, and Iris could not separate her anger from her judgment. She said nothing about the silver fracture, letting the other guards believe Theo had gone fully corrupt. Garrick used that silence perfectly, painting Theo as the traitor behind a series of failures, and the guards turned on him without mercy, beating him and locking him away before anyone could question the accusation too closely. While Iris stayed silent, a truly corrupted guard used the confusion to open a control route Garrick had been waiting for, sealing off Track 9 with commuters, homeless families, and children trapped inside. When Theo finally found her afterward, his voice was quiet, stripped of the anger she had expected. "You knew I was still trying to hear the oath, and you let them call me broken because you hated the uniform." The words settled into her chest like a stone, undeniable and impossible to argue against. She had spent years condemning a system for erasing conscience, only to erase Theo's the moment it became inconvenient for her own anger. Ronan insisted on going down into the lower tunnels himself after that. No royal escort, no cameras, no Garrick trailing behind to manage the narrative. Iris led him through service corridors she knew by memory, past families sleeping behind unmarked doors, past guard blankets abandoned in corners, past emergency exits chained shut from the outside. Chalk names covered one long stretch of wall, written by people the registry had never bothered to count. A small boy named Finn approached them cautiously, clutching a stub of crayon in one hand. He had drawn every emergency door in crayon because grown guards kept pretending they did not exist. Finn studied Ronan for a long moment before asking the question that would follow the Alpha King long after that night. "Are you the reason the doors lock?" Ronan had no answer ready. Iris held the silence instead, her voice quiet but unflinching. "Your guards know every route built for noble convoys. They do not know the children sleeping beside the tracks." Garrick struck back before Ronan could fully process what he had seen underground, releasing carefully edited footage that painted Iris as a rogue oath witch corrupting loyal guards. Celine appeared on the broadcast beside him, calling for immediate action to protect the city from a fraud who had somehow convinced trained soldiers to betray their king. Garrick pushed the council to pass the Absolute Oath Protocol, a measure that would force every badge to obey command over conscience, permit branding without trial, and allow entire tunnels to be sealed the instant they were deemed unregistered. A tunnel with no registered names is an empty tunnel. Seal it. Track 9's oxygen levels began falling as the protocol moved toward activation, trapping Finn, several commuters, and a handful of homeless families behind a door that no longer answered to mercy. Celine tried to frame the tunnel as an abandoned redevelopment zone rather than an occupied space, hoping to erase the human cost before it could reach the public. Iris wanted to run straight for the tunnel and tear the doors open with her bare hands. Ronan wanted to override every guard badge with a single alpha command. Iris stopped him before he could speak the order. Command alone would only prove Garrick's point, that obedience mattered more than conscience. What they needed instead was something no single voice could dismiss. Iris built what she began calling the open oath chain, refusing to carry the truth alone any longer. Theo agreed to stand as living testimony, despite everything, because the doors would not open without him. Elias brought the original oath record, unaltered by Garrick's years of quiet editing. A journalist named June Vale offered raw, uncut footage that no council statement could spin away. Ronan placed the subway stability order into the chain himself, a signed admission of the policy that had made all of this possible. Mara, still furious but unwilling to let more children suffer for Iris's mistake, gave her testimony as a survivor of the sweeps. Finn's crayon map joined the pile of evidence, small and crude and utterly damning. An oath carried by one cursed woman could be called manipulation. An oath carried by witnesses became a duty no commander could rewrite. Iris began the chain with Theo, publicly correcting the mistake she had allowed to stand. He did not forgive her instantly, and she did not ask him to. He simply stepped forward as a witness, because the truth mattered more than his anger, and that quiet choice cracked something open in Iris that her pride had kept sealed for years. The chain pulled deeper into the night of the fire that had killed her father, revealing a truth far darker than anyone had expected. Tomas had not simply saved 17 civilians on instinct. He had discovered Garrick deliberately allowing a rogue tunnel fire to spread in order to clear land for future redevelopment. Land that would later fall directly into Celine's family holdings. Tomas opened the doors, saved the civilians, and kept the original evacuation log as proof of what he had witnessed. Garrick had him killed in transport specifically to recover that log before it could surface. Ronan finally understood that his own subway stability order had not simply enabled negligence. It had provided legal cover for murder. Iris did not gloat, did not say the words he might have expected from her. She only handed him the fragment of her father's shattered badge and let him hear the oath buried beneath it for himself. To stand between harm and the unshielded. The betrayal cut deeper than any political scandal could have, because Garrick had not simply failed his king. He had corrupted the very meaning of the word that had once pulled a frightened 16-year-old out of a burning tunnel. Admitting Garrick had twisted the oath felt less like exposing a traitor and more like digging rot out of his own childhood. Track 9's oxygen kept falling as the Absolute Oath Protocol crept closer to activation, every badge in the city moments away from being locked entirely under Garrick's command. Finn pressed his small hand against the sealed glass from the inside, watching Theo standing helplessly on the other side, his own badge still bound by the command lock keeping the door shut. Do guards only protect people with badges? The question landed like a blade in Theo's chest, striking exactly where his own guilt already lived. Iris understood that opening Track 9 required triggering the original oath through every badge at once, forcing hundreds of guards to remember what they had sworn before command ever entered the equation. The cost would be enormous, her own bones already aching from the fractures she carried. Ronan reached for his authority instinctively, ready to force the doors open through Alpha Command alone. Iris stopped him with a single sentence. If they open the doors because you command them, Garrick wins. They have to remember why they swore. Ronan asked her, quietly, what she intended to do instead. I choose the oath before the badge. Garrick convened emergency command inside Central Control. Watching Track 9's status tick toward failure on the massive screens above him, the trapped commuters and children reduced to a cold label, reading unregistered tunnel presence. Celine stood near the council feed, ready to cut the broadcast the moment her family's contracts risked exposure. Garrick moved to activate the Absolute Oath Protocol, his hand hovering over the final control. Iris walked into the chamber with the open oath chain trailing behind her, the brand still burning faintly red on her wrist. Garrick smiled coldly at the sight of it. You have no authority here. Good. Iris met his eyes without flinching. Authority is what broke them. Ronan slammed the subway stability order onto the table between them, the paper trail of his own signature laid bare for every guard in the room to see. Elias read the original oath aloud, clear and unshaken. June's raw footage played across the screens, showing Iris Vale pulling civilians through smoke while Garrick's men stood by and did nothing. Mara spoke of the families who had survived because one guard refused to obey. Theo stepped forward in front of the guards who had once beaten him, admitting aloud that he had obeyed Garrick far longer than his conscience should have allowed. Finn's crayon map filled the largest screen in the room, small colored lines marking doors that had never officially existed. Celine lunged for the console, trying to cut the feed before the contracts buried beneath the footage could surface. June held the broadcast steady, refusing to let the signal die. Garrick ordered the guards to arrest Iris on the spot, his voice sharp with command energy meant to override every hesitation in the room. Badges flared to life across dozens of chests at once. Iris let the curse open fully, beyond anything she had ever risked before, the fractures spreading from her wrist up across her collarbone in jagged silver lines. For one breath, Iris could not tell whether the cracking sound came from the badges or from her own bones. Obey your commander. Garrick's voice cracked through the chamber like a whip. Iris answered without raising her voice at all. Remember your oath? One guard reached up and tore his own badge free from his chest. Then another followed. Theo knelt in front of Iris. not in worship, but to speak the words buried beneath every corrupted command Garrick had ever given. To stand between harm and the unshielded. The guards repeated it together, voices rising until the chamber shook with the sound of dozens of badges shattering open at once. Somewhere beneath them, Track 9's doors finally unlocked. Ronan did not raise his fist in victory. He stepped between Garrick and the control panel instead, blocking the last desperate attempt to seal the tunnel permanently. Iris felt her knees buckle from the weight of everything she had just carried. But she stayed conscious just long enough to hear Finn's ragged breathing echo faintly through the newly opened tunnel door. Garrick was exposed completely, buried under oath records, footage, testimony, and proof of the badges he had quietly altered for years. Guards took him into custody without a single command, needing to be repeated twice. In the days that followed, Celine's family contracts were dragged into the light alongside everything else. The quiet prophets built on cleared tunnels, no longer able to hide behind polished press releases. Ronan refused to let Garrick carry the full weight of the blame alone. He returned to the same platform where he had branded Iris, standing before the cameras without a prepared speech, without Celine beside him, without anything polished about the moment at all. I did not order every broken oath, but I wore the crown they were broken under. He moved to erase the brand from Iris's official record entirely, ready to wipe false claimant from every system in the city. Iris stopped him with a single word. Do not erase it. Ronan looked at her, confused by the request. She explained that the brand was not her shame to hide. It was evidence of exactly what blind obedience had been willing to do to an innocent woman in full public view. Leave the scar where the city can see what obedience did. Weeks later, Ronan signed what became known as the Open Oath Accord, a set of protections built directly from everything the crisis had exposed. Guard oath could no longer be interpreted solely by command office. Emergency seal orders required civilian witness review before they could be enacted. Subway sweeps had to log names instead of vague population estimates. Cursed oath testimony could never convict on its own, but it could never again be dismissed on its own either. Guards were granted the right to refuse any command that meant abandoning civilians in danger. Badge data became publicly auditable, and any branded accusation required a full tribunal before it could stand. Unregistered tunnels were declared occupied until physically and thoroughly cleared, never assumed empty by convenience. Tomas Vale's record was restored publicly, his name cleared of the treason charge that had followed him even in death. Redevelopment contracts tied to any emergency sealed zone were suspended indefinitely, cutting the profit motive out of future tragedies before it could take root again. No oath of protection shall be lawful if it teaches the strong to step over the unshielded. Iris became known as the Keeper of Broken Oaths, not because Ronan had claimed her, and not because the guards had knelt before her that first terrible night. She held the title because the city needed someone who would never let its protectors forget who they had sworn to shield. Sometime after the chaos had quieted, Ronan found her alone on an empty subway platform, the cameras gone, the guards gone, Celine gone from his life entirely. The mate bond between them still burned steady and undeniable, but he did not reach for her. He did not call her Luna, did not tell her where she belonged, did not ask anything of her at all beyond honesty. I branded you before I listened. Iris studied him for a long moment before answering. Then listen before you ask for anything else. He nodded, accepting the boundary without protest. What does protection mean to you? Iris looked down the empty tracks stretching into darkness. remembering every door she had ever watched close on someone who needed it open. Standing in the doorway when power wants it closed. It was not a declaration of love. It was something steadier, something that might, in time, become one. A month later, Blackwell Central Subway looked different in ways that mattered far more than fresh paint. The old screens no longer displayed protection through obedience. New words glowed above the platform instead. Protection begins with the unshielded. Track 9 had reopened fully, families finally recorded by name instead of estimate. Finn walked the platform beside Mara, no longer hiding behind maintenance doors. His crayon maps replaced by a small backpack slung over his shoulder. Theo stood guard duty nearby, his badge no longer flawless silver but visibly repaired, a thin crack still catching the light. Finn studied him for a moment before speaking. "You look like a real guard now." Theo didn't smile. Not exactly, but he stood a little straighter after that. Iris stood along the witness line, wearing her same worn uniform, no crown, no ceremony marking her presence. Ronan walked the platform without royal escort, learning slowly how to listen instead of command. A young guard trainee approached, uncertain, asking what to do when an order and an oath seemed to conflict. Iris let the silence stretch, waiting to see who would answer first. Theo stepped in instead. "Find the person the command steps over." Ronan listened without correcting him, without adding weight from his own authority. Near the end of the platform, a homeless mother rushed forward, panic in her eyes. Her child lost somewhere behind a service gate that once would have stayed locked without question. The old system would have asked for papers first. The new guard on duty asked something else entirely. "Who are we protecting?" The gate opened. The subway had once taught guards to kneel when power entered the platform. Now, under Iris's watch, they learned to kneel only long enough to hear the oath beneath the badge. Then they stood, not before the crown, but between the closed door and the people it was built to forget.